Hi and welcome to a late night edition of the State of the Net podcast. I'm Paolo Valdemarin.
And I'm Ewan Semple.
And we are recording this at 8:08 in the evening, which is, I'm usually asleep.
I was going to say it's almost past our bedtime, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And just to make clear that we're not ignoring this, today is the day before of the big announcement coming from Apple, so we have nothing to say about that because we don't know what's going to happen.
Because everybody else is speculating about it.
Yeah, so it's we're sure it's going to be amazing, but we have no idea what's going to happen.
Although, given the topics we are going to talk about, I'm going to leap ahead for a little bit here, because if it's all about the watch tomorrow, or mostly about the watch, it's interesting how my repositioning and rejigging of technologies, which we're going to talk about in a moment, I'm more excited about the watch than I am about almost any other Apple device these days, and more inclined to be all in on the watch. I'm thinking about getting an LTE the next time round.
You have the last version of the watch.
I know. I didn't say I was doing it this time, Paolo. I didn't say, but that's my inclination.
I'm kind of interested to see if they release a new iPad. They're supposed to do an iPad Air with a edge-to-edge screen. And my wife is market for a new iPad. I think that could be interesting.
Well, it's funny. I mean, my iPad is maybe second or third generation Pro, the whatever size it is, 10 inches one. And I've got no reason to change it. And I was saying to my wife, I mean, I'm not going to change my phone either, despite being on the upgrade program. I no reason to, and have no reason to upgrade my iPad. And you can see why this becomes a bit of an issue for Apple, because they make tools that just last. And, there's obviously an incremental shift in what the things are capable of, but none of it so far, as I say, apart from the watch, has got me that animated.
Yeah, and I'm totally waiting for my MacBook is. I have the MacBook, which at this point is, 4 years old, and it was small when it came out. I love it because it's so light, but it's really struggling to do this.
Oh, it's the MacBook Adorable, isn't it? Yes, the little one.
Yeah. So, but of course now I'm waiting for the new Apple Silicon. So, who knows when they rumors are that it's going to be a 13-inch MacBook Pro. So I'm definitely waiting for that one.
My younger daughter Hannah just went off to college on Saturday, and she bought a rose gold MacBook Air 13-inch, and it is lovely. The one with the Touch ID on it as well, so it's a very nice little device.
Yeah, they're beautiful. They're very nice toys. They're very well made.
Yeah.
So I think that the big change since the last episode, aside for late night recording, is that I'm back in London. And I went to the office on Friday with a couple of colleagues. And it was good. I mean, I must say that, I wrote this in a blog post, but I think that to me, it felt a little bit like when I can use Italian instead of English for conversations. I mean, I don't have a problem using English, but it feels much more natural if I can do this in Italian. I mean, sitting in the same room with guys and chatting about things and sketching things on a wall, it just takes away a lot of artificial tension and attention that you have to give. And even if we have amazing collaboration tools, it feels like it required less effort to obtain the same amount of communication. So as much as we're continuing to working from home, I mean, probably we're going to have another day in the office this week, but probably not much more than that. It's having some regular old style office time actually made me realize that I'm missing it. It's it works better, especially working with younger colleagues, where you just have a chance of, if you want, repeating things or understanding things better, or having to cross language barriers. It's being in person is actually useful.
It's interesting because I'm involved in a sort of startup business at the moment that is focused around property and what happens to property post-COVID and all those sorts of issues. And the guy who's running it's calling it sort of omni-channel working, which is an interesting way of describing it. And as you were describing your situation, I was thinking that the optimum thing would be to have the right mix, wouldn't it? And because there's lots of downsides about being in an office, and in some ways sitting in an office trying to look busy is really unproductive, and there's too much time spent having meetings that aren't necessary, all the downsides. But if you could just somehow teleport into an office, or you're lucky you're quite close to the office, but if you just used the office for when you did the sorts of things you've just described, but didn't feel the need to sit there from 9 to 5, and I think a lot of the cleverness in the future is going to be about managing those transitions better, so that we make the best of the different tools.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not sure that this is just a matter of where you are. I mean, I think there is plenty of situations where you're just stuck on Zoom calls 9 to 5. So does it matter? Does it make a difference? I mean, to be honest, the fact that between Zoom calls I can walk to a colleague and have a quick chat, something that I would never do on Zoom. I mean, between Zoom calls, I don't want to have other Zoom calls. But if you can just take a break, have a coffee, have a chat, look at something, I do think that it does create opportunities. I'm not saying that everybody should go back to the office 9 to 5, 5 days a week. I like not going to the office. I don't have any problem working from home and working remotely. I think that this does give the opportunity of coming up with new and better ways to work.
Yeah.
Because it is forcing us to do stuff that otherwise we wouldn't do.
Yeah.
But a little bit of face-to-face time.
Yeah.
Is actually nice, and it is useful. And I think that the more you work in diverse environments where perhaps you need a little bit more communication, a little bit more effort, the more being in person helps. I mean, if it's the situation between two skilled professionals who just need to exchange a few words to deliver something, to ask for something, you can do that online. It doesn't really matter. If you are in a situation where you have a mix of senior and junior people, and somebody maybe on their first job and learning, being able to have a little bit more conversation and a little bit more proximity is I think is helpful. And very often this is the case with startups where you can't afford to buy the professionals who can just exchange 3 words and understand everything. I hope that companies will not suffer by trying to do too much remote working.
It's the same old thing of making the right use of the right tools, and by tools I include offices, for the right job, isn't it? And that's about being aware of productivity and what's working and what's not. And I think that's something generally we need to think more about with all the tools that we use. In fact, you were just commenting on the fact that I'd done a post on my blog about going back to trying a bullet journal. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a guy called Ryder Carroll came up with this pen and paper notebook-based system for recording thoughts and ideas, but also tracking actions and habits and all sorts of other things. And it became a big thing a few years ago, and I tried it a few years ago. And then it sort of turned into all sorts of elaborate designed arty sort of examples of the bullet journal and in some ways strayed from its original purpose. But I've gone back to trying it again because I'm aware that, I love productivity tools and I love trying new ones and learning them and have had a lot of benefit from them over the years. But I'm also aware that my life is distributed across multiple different tools and the bits don't always join up. It can feel quite fragmented sometimes with my journaling in one app and my to-dos in another app, whatever. And I'm actually quite enjoying this. Only 2 or 3 days in, but I'm enjoying having it all in one physical book. And it's a bit like you were saying about the office. I mean, it's almost like the friction of having to turn backwards and forwards a couple of pages just to recheck things, or migrating things from one part of the book to another and writing them out again. And he makes the point in his own book about the process that it just makes you stop and slow down and think. Whereas bashing away on your keyboard, doing keyboard commands like we all learned to do, is not always giving you that space. And so to taking it even further, I've, for the first time in my life, bought a Kindle. And, I've used the Kindle app on my phone and my iPad forever. But I'm sort of aware that I don't finish enough of the books that I buy. And I think that's partly just because the devices seduce me into either buying new ones or going off and doing something else. And so having, in a sense, an electronic equivalent of a real book, and I still buy real books, but I want to be able to carry this thing with me. So I guess, long way of saying, it's me just thinking, okay, are the tools I'm using helping me, or are they making things worse, and trying something different?
Speaking of distractions, I watched a movie yesterday on Netflix called The Social Dilemma, which is something I think came out quite recently, and it's a kind of a big documentary where there are interviews with former managers of old big companies, and a fictional story of a family with kids interacting with social media. And in particular, there is this one kid who is using something that's not called Facebook, but we can imagine it's something like Facebook, where they showed the other side with the AI trying to send him messaging, trying to pull him back into the application, and then sell an ad on an auction of an ad for his attention. And I think it's pretty well made, in the sense that this is the type of show where I started watching it and I thought, okay, probably this is going to try to convince me of something. I will probably feel convinced about it, but then I will think harder and realize that it's all wrong. I haven't been able to figure out how it's all wrong yet, in the sense that, the way they describe it, and I think it's interesting because you have these people, they say, we didn't mean to do this when we started. But on the other hand, we have created a system that is specifically optimized to try to capture people's attention. And most probably, this is not a healthy thing. Most probably, the way we're using, especially because this is managed by companies that need to maximize profit for their shareholders, it's a recipe for disaster. And they argue some of the stuff that we have been discussing here for, this is the 30th episode, so for the last 29 episodes, around the consequences of social media. And even when these were not part of the design, they still happened. And, I've noticed you have been sort of stepping away from...
Yeah, I was going to say that. And it wasn't a big, I get right from back in the early days of blogging, you got so tired of people announcing that they were giving up blogging and then being back 6 months later. But so I haven't said I'm not using Facebook anymore, but I think I called the post drifting away. And it was partly around my mum's illness and eventual death that I was just focused on other things, and it became more claustrophobic, I think is the right word. Somebody else used that word about it, which sounds antisocial, and I'm not quite sure where I feel about the fact that by pulling back from using Facebook, I'm losing contact with an awful lot of friends. But it feels better. And I'm not going in there. I'll go in there once in a while, and likewise Twitter, I'll go in there once in a while, but I'm not checking it as much as I used to. And again, it's not that I'm falling prey to this thing, that this evil empire's been doing things to me against my will. It's not that. It's just me recalibrating, if you like. And it's been nice to be more focused on my blog and to see my blog as my blog rather than somewhere where I copy and paste stuff into other platforms. And likewise, bizarrely, I resurrected my Flickr account the other day there. And I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying... Because I was missing the ability to share moments with people, because as I've banged on about for years, it makes you notice more if you've got somewhere to share stuff. So you take more pictures, or you notice more interesting events that you could write about. And I was sort of missing having a reason to take photographs. And Flickr's interesting because it's given me that back, and I pay for the pro account, so I don't have any ads. And that was what was really beginning to piss me off about Instagram, the fact that they're deliberately making it hard for me to tell what's a friend's post and what's an ad for a Land Rover, So the consequence of I'm not missing it, Like I said, I haven't gone off in the huff, but I'm not rushing back either.
Something that I was wondering is, once I read your post, I went back to Flickr, and I think I cancelled my pro account probably a year ago, or
it was about the same. Yeah,
not too long ago. I just kept hoping and paying. I wasn't really using it. So anyway, I fired it back up. I figured out what my password was, and I realized that. I don't have. Of all the people I was following, probably there is 2 or 3 still alive, and then a bunch of institutions. And the funny thing is that I was following the White House and 10 Downing Street, but probably when I started following, there was other people at the White House and 10 Downing Street. So suddenly I have all these photos of Trump and Boris, and it was like, and then I was thinking, why don't we just post photos on our blogs?
Well, that's true, and I've been thinking about moving back to that as well, which is what we all did at the start. And it's that sort of a rich tapestry, if you like, of a blog that I'm kind of moving back to, and just crafting a blog, thinking it's my representation on the web and owning it. And it's interesting.
I'm not sure about the how it could work. How easy it is to post a photo on straight to your blog from your phone, but I'm pretty sure there are tools that allow you to do that. And provided that I can upload full resolution photos, they go on my server, and I can put them in a specific channels. I can probably figure out how to manage that process.
Thing is, the people who read my blog is a very select group.
You think that if they see a photo, they might freak out?
No, I think that nobody would see it, or at least not very many people. And that's another thing that I'm not sure.
They're still running command line computers. They can't render photos.
That's right. But it's funny watching people trying really hard to get images incorporated into drafts, and the whole point of drafts is that it doesn't do images. But anyway, that thing about the lack of numbers on my blog, and almost finding that a benefit, not a downside. Because part of what was claustrophobic about Facebook was not worrying about what other people thought, but being aware of what other people thought. And I think I wrote somewhere that one of the things about Mum passing away has just been to think, well, to be reminded that this is finite and you only get one shot, and spending too much of it worrying about what other people think is a waste of it, really.
There is somebody in this Netflix movie who says that all these social media sites are basically these huge supercomputers and AIs aiming at your simple human brain, and how they will always win because they are designed to grab your attention and to draw you back and to try to keep you engaged. What is interesting is that they're basically saying what is happening on social media sites is not real. It's always somehow augmented by some kind of algorithm. So, people that react to what you post is not all your friends and not all the people you know. Actually,
No.
only a tiny number of people that you're connected to on Facebook will see your post and will probably react to it.
That's exactly that. That's what was bugging me. Yep.
And this is something completely outside of your control. You don't know who they are. It is most likely that these are the most likely people to react to your post.
Yes.
But maybe this might very well be the people who might most likely be upset by your post. Hence a reason to push them toward your post, because being upset and being offended is a very good reason to go back and to kind of ask for more. So the way these algorithms are distorting reality in a way that we don't really understand is tricky. And on the other hand, the hopeful note at the end of the movie is the fact that they say there is no reason why we couldn't use all the things that we have learned about changing people behavior for the good.
Yeah, totally.
We can help people using this, and it's actually one of the companies I work with, Tomo, specializing in creating an app to support people suffering from depression. And what we do there all the time is to change people's habit, but for the good. We're trying to establish healthy habits. We use a technique called behavioral activation. So it's interesting how we start learning to live with this technology, and we need to learn to live with these algorithms, and we can't just run away from them because they're going to be there. We just need to learn to work with them instead of against them. And it reminds me a little bit that this new car that we got, it has all kind of clever things and speed control and lane, and it keeps you in the lane. It brakes when there is something in front of you, and you have to learn to live with that, because I think that if you learn to drive with her, it becomes a nice experience, and most definitely a more safe experience. If you start reacting to it, if you start saying, I don't want this to get in my way, then of course you can turn it off, but then you lose the advantage of the safety. And to be honest, it took very little to get used to it, and to sometimes
you were easily trained.
Oh, yeah, probably. I guess that I like to change my behaviors. I mean, I like to embrace these new things. So after a while, I realized that there were points where I would just expecting the car to brake. Then I would brake. I was there ready to brake if it wouldn't happen. But you kind of start working with it, and I think it's interesting. But of course, the challenge is, in order to be able to work with it, you need to understand how it works, and all these social media platforms are black boxes. We have no idea and we have no control. They're not designed for us to use. They're designed for advertisers to use.
It's really interesting. Just as you were describing you being trained by your car, it sort of gave me a bit of a chill, because it is very brave new world, isn't it? It's we start to accommodate the system and risk losing something while we do that. And it's so finely balanced, isn't it, between retaining autonomy and decision making and just giving up and letting the system do it for you. And it's bad enough when it's driving, but it's much worse when it's your life.
Well, I think that, again, it's not about giving up control. It's about sharing control and being able to leverage. It's like, okay, I'm not even trying to remember phone numbers. I have no idea what my phone number is. It's ridiculous, but I don't know what my phone number is, because if I need it, it's there. And I have, thousands of contacts in my phone, and, they're all there. I'm not trying to, when somebody tries to give you directions, I don't even try to start memorizing them.
No, I'm the
just
same.
Giving me your
totally.
give me your
the
address,
postcode and shut up.
and and a computer will figure it out for me. Is this good? Are we just giving up control? I mean, maybe, but if a computer is better than me at remembering numbers, finding places, or braking in the case of an emergency, I'm fine with it. I mean, I think that my life is going to be better.
But I'm not but. And what matters is sort of what we're left with. And we've talked about this before, about what is human beings' USP, what makes us different, and what will, I've just watched The Matrix again for the umpteenth time. And just that whole thing about the tables being turned and us becoming subservient to the technologies, and that bit about what it means to be human and why that makes us different or better than machines, is getting closer all the time, isn't it?
We're all living in an emulation, this, right?
Well, of course.
What pisses me off about this emulation is that if this is so good that, I'm looking around me and I'm seeing this amazingly high resolution 3D environment, which is all artificial. And in front of me, I'm seeing the screen of a computer. How the hell there are bugs in this computer, in this simulated computer? I mean, it should be perfect, right? I mean, if we can have this perfectly created reality, why this crazy dude who's running this huge simulation is putting bugs in my computer?
Because he likes seeing that reaction in you, Paolo. He likes triggering you.
I don't know.
Talking about bugs and living in systems and stuff, I was talking to my daughter's boyfriend about playing Doom back in the day, and when they first made a networked version of Doom, and I was in a sort of early managerial post at the Beeb, and we had access to the BBC network over a night shift, and we had little intercom systems that we needed for work. Basically, the combination of all of this, we ended up playing this fantastic lengthy game of Doom with the two of us taking on the game. And we were in different rooms, and we were sort of shouting to each other through the telecom to, you take the guy on the left and I'll take the guy on the right, blah, blah, blah. Ended up being officially reprimanded on a headed BBC newspaper for, letterhead for misuse of BBC technology. But the reason I told all that story was it turns out it was 27 years ago that Doom came out. There's just been some anniversary port of it onto modern platforms in 27 years. Good grief.
And on this note,
two old men who are now way past their bedtime are going to wish you all good night.
Stay tuned.